Today I have with me Nasser Najjar. He's a Gazan and a Palestinian who's currently based in Vancouver, Canada. And he writes about Palestinian issues for English-speaking audiences. And he has also worked with several IGOs, including the International Committee of Red Cross in Gaza. Nasser, it's very nice to have you today.
Nice having you. Thank you very much.
So Nasser, when we were speaking earlier, I was informed that you lived in Gaza from age 17 to 33, and then you left in 2014 when Israel was attacking Gaza. And I remember the 2014 attacks. I was actually participating in protests in Chicago at the time when Israel launched an assault on Gaza in 2014, and I think you left then. But you spent a good chunk of your life there. So tell us to our audience what was life like in Gaza?
Well, Gaza is, I don't think there's any other place in the world is like Gaza. Uh, in both good and bad ways. Um, Over there, the hardship is different from whatever I experienced everywhere else. As you know, the work opportunities are so limited. The movement is so limited. It's everything is so controlled by another group of people that you do not see. You do not know who they are. Because the Israelis, as they keep on saying, they withdraw from Gaza as you know, physically, as the soldiers aren't there, like as boots on the grounds. But guess what? They do control every single aspect of our lives as Palestinians in Gaza. They do control the fishermen who goes into the sea, and they block them from fishing to some sort of extent. So that do, you know, it's like it has an immediate impact on our diet and food. They do control the borders. Just, you know, the last, since the start of Ramadan, for example, this Ramadan, not a single truck crossed into Gaza. And this was a habit that the Israelis would do whenever they have, whenever they feel that they want to do it, whenever they want to do it, whether they are, you know, they have a threat, they just block the borders, they don't allow food and aid to go in, or even if they're celebrating some sort of a religious matter, they just block the border.
And most recently, they're blocking aid as we speak, right? So is it
As
true
we're
that?
speaking right now, like there is nothing entered into Gaza since the beginning of Ramadan, um, and this is, you know, the tip of the iceberg. They do control. We do use the Israeli currency. We do use the banking system, and the two shocking things that a lot of people doesn't know, or many of them they don't know. Uh, we pay taxes to the Israelis
Mhm.
as Palestinians. Uh, and it goes through something called Makasa, which is like, you know, the PA and the trader, or like the businessmen, they do their, they import whatever goods that they need, and then the taxes goes to the PA, and then the PA cuts some. I'm sorry, taxes go to Israel, and then they cut their share, return the rest to uh, to the PA,
And the PA being the PA being the Palestinian Authority.
Palestinian Authority. Now, the biggest matter where the Israelis control every aspect of our life, and this is kind of mind blowing in the 21st century, and this is kind of the reason why the whole October 7 maybe happened, is this piece of paper in front of you.
Mhm.
This is my Palestinian ID. It's you do have the Palestinian flag on it, but it's written in Hebrew. It's written in Hebrew because this goes into the civil registry in Israel. This way, every Palestinian, uh, whatever their moves are, whatever they do, whenever they go to a doctor, whenever they need any paper to be done, any document to be done, it goes through their system. So they know every single move any of us is doing. And in a way, it's a way to control who is Palestinian and who is not. If I didn't register my son within 5 years, he's not going to be Palestinian.
Mhm.
Um, um, and and as I mentioned, it's written in Hebrew.
Mhm.
I'm not an Israeli citizen. I do not vote in Israeli Knesset. I do not vote um, in Israeli municipality. I don't use any of the Israeli services. And still, my ID is written in Hebrew.
And the irony here is that you cannot use the nice things and the services or the nice roads, but then when it comes to the surveillance issue, you basically go under the Israeli system. But when it comes to the services and the nice things that you're saying, you're basically outside the Israeli system.
Absolutely. And what does this remind you of? This reminds you of what happened with what happened to our African brothers and sisters when they were taken against their will and they were used as slaves in North America. And this is the bidding that they used to take them there. This ID over there gives the Israelis every single aspect of our life. So that is kind of the way that you see Gaza in how it's been controlled by the Israelis. Now, the good things about Gaza, the good things and the wonderful things that you will never see in any other place. The people there are resilient. Like it's like they know that the Israelis do not want to allow, let's say, gas to come into Gaza. Uh, they would change the cars' motors to make it work with cooking gas. If the Israelis prevent the cooking gas from going in,
Mhm.
they will use cooking oil.
Mhm.
Um, so the funny thing about the cooking oil, usually it must be used like it must be used or like people use like they have to cook with it first. So the you would smell the what someone had dinner last night. Like if they were cooking fish or they were cooking falafel, you would still have the smell of the what they had dinner last night. That's aside. The resilience is something really magnificent.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I was just watching on the news today, and what's really incredible is that the rubble and all the ruins and the Palestinians who have returned north to north of Gaza, they were literally living there and rebuilding it, and that's I think that goes to the whole resilience issues because for most of us, like we cannot imagine doing that, but the Gazans do it, every couple years that Israel engages in a new assault, they rebuild again and they go back to their homes.
Like imagine if those people over there they were given the chance. Like imagine with that mindset, uh, if they were given the chance to growth like the rest of the world, like the 8 billion other people in the world, they were given the chance to live a normal life, and they would be magnificent, intelligent group of people. Um, and but they're not given the chance because every single time your house is destroyed you go and rebuild it again. So instead of you're spending your time on growing, you're spending on time you're actually redoing what you've done for the last 20, 30 years, which is building the house brick by brick, brick by brick. People there, they are so close to each other in a way that they're warm. They will hold each other. They will support each other. The other day, I saw this documentary done by Al Jazeera, uh, 360, where a nurse was in Al Shifa hospital when the Israelis burned it down, And he said that they put us all in one room. They didn't provide us with food. And then I had to share 2 pieces of bread with 8 people for 2 days. And still, this is something, um, it will be hard to imagine people in general and people in the West in particular to do that.
No, definitely. And also, I mean, I saw a pro-Israeli tweet or a post on, I think now it's called X, not Twitter anymore, but I saw a post on X from a pro-Israeli account, and that account was retweeting something a Palestinian had said, and a Palestinian had said that I have a 70-member family, and many of them were killed or martyred during the Israeli attack on Gaza. Um, and the pro-Israeli account was like, they're lying because there's no way they have 70-member family. But what they don't understand is that the kind of community and the closeness and the help that the Gazans give to each other, and also the extended and the larger families that they might have compared to, say, Israelis or compared to the Western nations. And I think that closeness when it comes to the family and community bonds also really helps with that resilience that you're speaking about.
And as I mentioned, it's like, as you mentioned, maybe they don't understand. It's a part of resistance. Having a lot of family members, like my uncle, for example, he has 9 children, because there is a chance a child might die, and or might be injured or might be killed, or because of course we are, it's like we are living under occupation, and this occupation have they do have full immunity. They can do whatever they want. There will be no questions whatsoever. So this is the only way that you can protect the the family. This is the only way that you can make sure that the cause doesn't uh, get eliminated. Otherwise, Palestinians as an ethnicity, we would be extinct by this time if we had only a child or two. Um, because it is a part of resistance. Once you have a child, they will stand for you. They will grow with you. They will they will help you in life matters. They will help you in rebuilding the house again and again and again.
And speaking of resistance, this brings me to my next question regarding October 7th. So tell us, I think we all have some memories of what was happening on October 7th or our reaction to it. So what was going through your mind on October 7th of 2023?
First thing came into my mind when I saw, because it's like, I looked into my phone, and that's how I knew that there was something. I looked into my phone, there was like an um, alert image where it shows, where like missiles or fires are taking place, and I thought it's a glitch, because the whole map was red, because there was no indication that anything is happening. And then I looked again, and there's like, I found members of resistance are actually crossing the border. And in a way, it's like, how is this possible? Because if you think about it, it's not. Israel kept on selling itself as this high tech, powerful army that can never be uh, invaded, and they reach to the highest level of technology and security humans can ever reach to. They had the arrogance actually uh, to provide the Americans with maps how to build their borders on Mexico with Mexico, um, and I think they've got a big part of that border. I'm not really sure of that info, just to be 100%. I mean, building that part. Anyhow, um, so once you think about it, Hamas as fighters who do not have any heavy military armors, they do not have any aircrafts, they do not have a lot of uh, what the armies do need to invade. Uh, and I won't say a country, because, as I mentioned here, with this idea over here, each Hamas member has his info and his ID with the Israelis that makes it, again, it's an occupied land. Gaza is an occupied territory. Um, so now the Palestinians or the resistance is walking into Israel. That is not, I don't think that is a violation to the international law. Now, were there um, were there acts of violence? Yes, they were. Were there that might occur to war crimes in some extent, but uh, the act itself, by crossing into the military bases, that's legitimate. Now, um, an Israeli soldiers being eliminated by a Hamas soldier, that is something not forbidden in international humanitarian law, and vice versa. A Palestinian soldier eliminated by Hamas, by Israel, is not forbidden as well, because soldiers, they chose that to themselves. They chose that path. They, as long as civilians are not shot deliberately, that's where it's supposed. That's where the line's supposed to take place, and that's where investigation is supposed to occur and start. And this actually raises questions why Israel doesn't want the UN to investigate what happened on October 7th. Why Israel doesn't want Human Rights Watch to investigate. I would love for an investigation to happen, and if there's someone who hurted civilians uh, in a deliberate way, to be taken to courts and justice. And that's how we maintain humanity. That's how we maintain our humanity.
Yes, and I mean, and there's also so much misinformation because I remember when October 7th had just happened, there were a lot of Israeli officials and Israelis and also people, Western pundits, who were saying that the babies were being beheaded by Hamas and
Oh, yeah.
comparable claims, and most of those claims I think ended up being bogus and misinformation. And I even remember when Saddam Hussein had invaded Iraq in the 1990s. There were claims that he's taking babies out of incubators, and I'm not trying to justify Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, but then that was kind of the misinformation campaign that was happening in the Western media in order to mobilize forces for intervention. But then there were a lot of lies about what Saddam Hussein's forces were doing in Kuwait, which was the whole famous taking the babies out of the incubators.
Yes.
And so this is similar. So it's so interesting how these patterns repeat themselves, the patterns of misinformation, but people fall for it over and over again. And yeah, so I think you're very, very right that we have to separate fact from fiction, and also to prosecute crimes where civilians were deliberately hurt, but also to try to understand Hamas's attack on Israel in the context of the occupation and the ethnic cleansing. I think this is why history is so important, because when you contextualize current events in their historical context, it really helps you to understand justice and who's right and who's wrong. We were talking, and you told me that you had several family members who were in Gaza while the genocide was happening in since October 7th of 2023. So can you tell us about what they were going through and what your family was dealing with during 2024?
The feelings are a lot. I don't know from where to start with this, but let's start with my parents first and my little sister. They used to live in Gaza, Ramal area, um, and then once the war happened, because they do live very close by to a very sensitive area. My first request, like, okay, guys, you have to leave um, to the middle area where my uncles are. Don't think twice, you guys. And they're living in a building of they're living on the fifth floor. So as in seniors and older people, it takes a lot of time to go through the stairwells in case that something happened. All of these small details you have to keep in mind. Um, they moved to my uncle's place, and within a week, my sister has to move. My other sister, my older sister Lena, uh, and her daughters and her husband, who used to live in the middle area, they moved to the same area where my family is because they lost their house. Um, Throughout the 15 months when the genocide took place, um, my daily routine was to wake up in the morning to check if when was the last time I received a WhatsApp text from my family members, from any of my family members. And then I would check my Facebook account to see who I've lost from my friends, co-workers, or extended family members. Uh, so this was, imagine that this is every day you're doing this. You're waking up, you're checking who's dying, then you go to brush your teeth and go to work. This was my life for the last 15 months. This is nothing compared to what they were going through of starvation, pain, um, and displacement. Because once you ask, like any of us moved from a house to another, and all of us felt, oh, it's a moving day, it's going to be tiring. I'm going to move my chair, I'm going to put it in a bus, I'm going to take it to another house. Oh, that's so tiring, I'm going to bring my friends with me. Imagine a whole population of 2.5 million people are doing this routinely, no idea where they're going, dragging, doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, how sick you are, whether you can walk, whether you have children, whether you do have an important viral viral job where safe sign. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Doesn't Your dream doesn't matter. Your ambitions doesn't matter. Your family members doesn't matter. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters that you have to keep on running. You're starved. It doesn't matter. You have to keep on running. You forgot your medicine. Doesn't matter. And this was what my family going through. This alongside with 2.5 million people. At some point, my parents and my little sister they managed to evacuate to Egypt in April 2024. And this happened because of the generosity of the friends and community in Vancouver, and because of what the shock that this war bring to the whole world, not only to Vancouver but in general. When they donated for my family's evacuation.
And did Egypt accept many Palestinian refugees in 2024, or?
They did. They did accept. There are different numbers. Um, they are referring anything between 80,000 to 200,000. Nothing is specific. Um, but then those who left, uh, they left with the pain that they have loved ones, they have homes, and you live the survival's guilt all the time. Like, I live the survival's guilt every day since I left Gaza in 2015, and the war didn't happen. Imagine those who managed to escape and to use um, to leave everything behind, including their daughters, their sons, their children, or their parents, just to stay alive. And maybe because many of them they're like many of the who left, they're cancer patients, they're um, you know uh, people with disabilities, uh, people who are in need for not, to for specific needs. Like, for example, with my parents, they're so old and seniors, and they do live through, like they do have few um, diseases that they're suffering from. And my sister needed to take care of them. And if they stay there, I know that I'm gonna lose them. Um, so put that into consideration, or multiply it on 2.5 million people. Uh, so through this war, I lost my uncle because of the lack of medication. Um, my other uncle Hassan, who was captured by the Israelis, a 75 years old man, and tortured. Like you are talking about torture for people who are not who are Israeli. Like the people who committed this torture are Westerners, Israelis, white skin. They have nothing to do with that land. And then they torture someone else. Maybe killing is different, but torturing is a different level. Because once you kill someone, you just end their suffering. But once you torture someone, you make them ask uh, for death every single day. Um, and God knows what's happening right now in the Israeli prisons. Who knows? No one knows. And I I bet all of my money, not a single Israeli soldier will be taken to courts because of this. Um, Throughout the 5 wars, there were 664 cases Palestinians raised against Israeli soldiers in Israeli courts, because that's how the system. Because we are still under occupation, and that's the way that we have to go through. There was one case where an Israeli soldier was won against an Israeli soldier, and that case was for an Israeli soldier in the year 2012, in the year 2009, stealing a credit card from a businessman while he was in Gaza Strip in the invasion of 2008 2009. He stole a credit card, and he used 1,200 shekels, which is the equivalent of $300. In a way, when I mention this story, the idea of it is um, this is how they're mocking the Palestinian residents. I'm not saying the Palestinian citizens, because we are not citizens to Israel,
You're subjects.
but for them,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So the legal system in Israel is so broke that there is no way that um, we can use it. Israel is the only country in the world where it takes where it where children are taken into a military judge and military courts. Children of the age of 14 can be taken to military courts. That doesn't happen in North Korea. That doesn't happen in Russia. That doesn't happen in the Arab or Muslim world, where they keep on, the Western world keep on um, lecturing us about human rights. It happens in a Western democracy.
Or an extension of how it's portrayed, an extension of Western liberal democracies and being the only democracy in the Middle
Yeah,
East. And
that's why.
yes, no, definitely. But also, so tell me about. So I mean, yeah, what you're describing is a very difficult situation, and regarding also your family part of from going to Egypt, and this is also an interesting data I was seeing. I think it was United Nations data that global South countries actually take way more many refugees than Western countries do. So I mean, there's a high concentration of different nationalities in the West. So in Canada, where you are in Vancouver, I mean, there are probably tens of nationalities there. But at the same time, they take a very small number of migrants and refugees. But if you look at, say, Bangladesh taking refugees from Myanmar, or Iran taking refugees from Afghanistan,
Yes.
it's in the millions. It's in the millions. And even I think there's Sudanese refugees now in neighboring African countries, and they're also in. And also, what you were saying about the survival's guilt, that's interesting too, because I mean, my situation is not at all comparable. But I was in Iran when the tensions between Iran and Israel went high because there were um, exchange of military action between the two countries. But I was in the state of mind that I have to stay here while this is happening, and I shouldn't leave. So I think that's also, and I think in Palestine it's times 1,000 that kind of survival's guilt that you're mentioning, and that kind of group solidarity. That I think part of it also goes back to that community thing we were talking about. That when you have more resilient, more connected communities, I think that also increases the survival's guilt. But let's go from the actual genocide that was taking place in 2024 and part of 2025, the first couple of weeks of it. So the ceasefire happened on the last few days of the Biden administration, and Donald Trump took credit for it. But I think Biden administration also wanted to take credit for it, and I think that's open to debate. But tell us about the ceasefire, and whether you think that it's a fragile ceasefire, or whether it will remain intact.
That's $1 million question. So the ceasefire, um, about the ceasefire, it's it goes all under one element, because through the last 15 months, nothing changed. Hamas didn't want to give out, didn't want to return the hostages without guarantees that the war is going to be over. There will be a prisoner swap, um, and the blockade will be over. Sorry. And on the other hand, Israel doesn't want to provide any political solution. So the Biden administration was taken away um, by its fear of the Israeli lobby, the IPAC, and it was, and of course, by uh, the ideology of Biden himself as being a Zionist.
Yeah, and what's interesting is regarding that. There's a 36-year. There's that famous video of him when he's young, and he's saying that if Israel didn't exist, U.S. had to create an Israel. And then 36 years later, when he's old and fragile, and he looks like a really cute uncle, he's saying the same thing. He's sitting on a chair, and he's saying that if Israel did not exist, U.S. would have to create an Israel. So Biden's ideology is, I think, very important too.
What's really funny, that it seems that he was the best servant for Israel, and Netanyahu managed to humiliate him day on, day off, as many times as possible. Like, I've never seen a, uh, a president humiliated by an Israeli prime minister. A U.S. president was humiliated by an Israeli prime minister as much as Biden was. They paid a very high price in the last elections, and I'm happy. Like, yes, we've got Trump, but this is a lesson to Democrats. Listen to your grassroots. Don't let uh, the donors or the lobbyists control your agenda. You fear you didn't listen to your grassroots, and you're fearing to take any action to the level where it's really different. It's very different between the Republicans and Democrats. Democrats, they don't do anything, and Republicans, they speak a lot but they do something. Um, with the Democrats, they didn't allow Palestinian to speak out in the democratic. Uh, they didn't allow any Palestinian to speak out at the National Convention. Yesterday, Donald Trump gave the authority to his representative to speak to Hamas directly.
Mm.
Like see the huge difference. And guess what? The Republicans are going to come out with the results. Democrats will never come out with the results as long as they keep on going with the same ideology of fearing that they might make a mistake here or a mistake there. They have to be stronger. Yeah,
No.
and I'm talking about liberals and lefties and left wings. The left is so obsessed, so terrified of making any decisions, and that's what makes them lose in every battle in the U.S., in the U.K.,
Yeah, and I mean, and
etc.
with Donald Trump, I mean, there's a lot of existing discontent in the U.S., and I think he's kind of benefiting from that, and is presenting himself as a big anti-establishment figure that will, fight the deep state and bring something new. But you're right, the Democrats are just kind of go with the status quo, and they're very fearful of presenting something new. And I think that was probably Harris's calculation because she thought that if she just supports a genocide almost unconditionally, that will allow her to win. But I think if she actually took a firmer stance against Netanyahu, might have been better results.
I don't think the war would, like, a ceasefire wouldn't reach. We won't have a ceasefire if Harris was in power. She is so weak to make any decisions. Versus with Trump, he's unpredictable, and he is dangerous. That is for sure. But sometimes, if you are smart enough and you are strong enough, um, and you play your cards well, uh, you can come out with some sort of results with Trump. Versus with Democrats, they just do papers. They just do the paperwork. They make sure that everyone is kind of walking on a track. Um, but Trump, you have to be strong negotiator to stand against him. Otherwise, he will crush you.
No, and what I meant is
That's
in terms of the election results. I meant if Harris was firmer, took a firmer stance against Netanyahu and all his wishes, she might have had a better time, a better results with the elections, with the presidential elections. But yeah, I agree with you on the ceasefire issue. I think that's a separate issue. But then let's go back to the fragility of the ceasefire. So do you think it's fragile or will it remain?
as long as Trump keeps on thinking that he will win a Nobel Prize for bringing peace to this region, there is a chance, and as long as Hamas holds to the agreement that was signed by them and the negotiators in Israel, uh, there is a chance for the ceasefire to remain. Because this whole aspect, unfortunately, it's not run by ethicals, it's not run by even interest at this point. It's the whole thing is just standing because Trump wants to win the Nobel Prize, wants to have the ego that I bring peace to this region, while Biden couldn't do it for 15 months. Put everything behind its back and go back to war. But again, this might explode in Netanyahu's face, and he might anger Trump. Honestly, we don't know. We
Mhm.
really don't know. We're in a world where every morning you're waking up and there's something new is happening in that circus, which is called the White
Right.
House.
And I think any predictions you make regarding whether the ceasefire will remain or not, it has to be you're qualifying it. You're saying that I think that's the right thing. That you don't say that it will definitely happen one way or the other. As long as I think you're qualifying it. But I think these are all reasonable speculations. But I mean, speaking of Trump, so we all saw that AI video. I mean, I watched it. I had a very difficult time watching it because it was so cringe, and I think it even got ratioed. So it was, I think, on his Instagram where he made artificial intelligence generated video where Gaza becomes, this beachfront property that, he's developed. And then everybody looks happy. And like you're saying, he's taking credit for the peace and the prosperity. And it was so cringe that it got ratioed that even his followers were like, what the hell is this? I'm a Trump supporter, but this video is just so bad. That's what his followers were saying. So yeah, I wanted to ask you. I mean, how do you assess his? Basically, he's openly saying that he wants to commit a war crime and he wants to ethnically cleanse Gaza and remove the population so he can turn Gaza into a beachfront property. So how do you assess his basically threats or promise of ethnic cleansing? Do you think that it's just rhetoric and just kind of Trump being Trump, or is there something behind it?
Now, in a way, you have to look into it as, is he capable of doing it? And what are the resources that he's going to use? So if he's capable of doing it, that needs assistance or support by the neighboring countries, which is both Egypt and Jordan. If away from, being the rightful thing is not to ethnically cleanse a group of people, because that is unrightful to do, and that's against every law and religious or religion or law to ethnically cleanse any group of people. But let's look just purely on interest. If this happens, that will mean instability in Egypt for decades to come. And that will mean an existential threat to Jordan to actually remain a kingdom. Because if 2 million people move to Egypt, those people have been forced out of their homes. They're Palestinians, they're not Egyptians, with all due love and respect to my Egyptian brothers and sisters. But as an ethnicity, we do have ownership in Palestine itself. So there will be resistance that will take place, and it will take place against Israel. So this will force the Israelis to respond back to Egypt, and then Egypt will have to respond back to Israel, and this will keep on going back and forth. Don't forget that the economy in Egypt is not in the best shape. As for Jordan, it's already half of its population, over 55% of its population is Palestinian background. So if Gaza was ethnically cleansed, that means that the West Bank, which has no to little resistance, will be ethnically cleansed within a week. And then they will push as well the Palestinian Israelis either to Jordan or Syria. So you will bring more threats to people all around the region, like all the other Arab countries. The authoritarian Arab countries will go through this threat. So at this point, the regimes has to choose either to satisfy Trump and avoid his punishment, versus they do not exist anymore. Mm-hmm. So in a way, they've been cornered. We have to see what are they made of. The Arab regimes who didn't support the Palestinians for the last 15 months, now they are forced to take tough decisions. Either that they will stand their grounds, or they will face consequences that will last for decades to come.
And yeah, regarding what you say about Jordan and Egypt, and they have to be kind of on board too. And I don't think Trump can necessarily really will them into accepting what he wants. But also, I think you remember about the instability. Because the Palestinian refugees going into Jordan and Lebanon, that caused some instability for those countries. And I think this would be so after the Nakba in 1948, the Palestinians going into Jordan, for example, and then later to Lebanon. You could say that that brought some instability to those countries. So in this case, I think that it could be a comparable case in again in Egypt and Jordan. But speaking of the Egyptian and the Jordanian position in relation to Palestine. So you talked about it more in the geopolitical context, but when it comes to average Palestinians and average Gazans, how do they view their relationship with their Arab neighbors, in this case, Jordan and Egypt? And also, I would be curious about how the Palestinians perceive Yemen and the UAE. Yemen, because they have been resisting Israel and attacking Israeli-linked ships that are crossing their waters, and the UAE because it normalized with Israel.
I mean, let's start with the closer ones, then we'll go further. So when it comes to Egypt as people, like um, and Jordanians, but Gazans have a very, very specific relation with Egyptians. Many of us hold the very last names. Many of us are, um, we do have family. We merge families, and then families are kind of connected. I do have aunts in Egypt from my great grandfather. Um, that's myself. Uh, Now, of course, we understand that the Egyptians do have a peace treaty with the Israelis, but in the same time, um, we were expecting more, not only from them, but from the whole Arab region. Jordan, every Palestinian goes to Jordan at some point of his life if he had to travel. Because there's many of us as well. They do have family connections over there. Um, Kind of our dialect is the same. You don't feel that you're a foreigner in either Jordan or Egypt. Uh, Yemen, God, like if it's funny because every time you bring up Yemen, it's like you have to find. This is something that became in Arabic. لاقي لك صاحب زي اليمن لفلسطين. Um, it's like it just became kind of a new saying. Find yourself a friend as Yemen to Palestine. Like that's kind of like you have to, if you want to find a friend, you have it must be the same relation that Yemen has to
With
Palestine.
Palestine, wow.
Like Yemen put everything on the stake for one particular matter. Leave Gaza alone. Like and they stood against the US, the UK, Israel, France. Like it's kind of like it doesn't matter what you do, bring it all in. We're all the way. So from a political view, but even it's like on a weekly basis, no any other country, and I love every protest that came out and spoke to us and supported my people. But for 15 months, every week, you will have 1 million people in the square, in the main Yemeni square in Sana'a. That is like outstanding. Like Emirates.
No, but I mean, this whole normalization trend, I mean, I think the UAE had more agency in it, but when it comes to countries like I think Sudan and some other countries that are talking about normalization with Israel, I think it's more pressure from the US. So the idea is that we'll give you something if you normalize with Israel, and they're trying to move the Arab and the African region in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, with Morocco, it was given, they recognize the Sahara region. Still, you don't need the US recognition. All what you need to do is to be good to your people, and everyone is going to be happy to if you manage to have a system where everyone is treated equally um, under the rule of law. I don't find people will be unsatisfied to join that country. Like, why do people go move to Canada or to move to Sweden? Or because everyone is under the same law or treated equally under law. Um, and so you don't need the U.S. recognition for the Sahara to be part of Morocco because it didn't really change anything. Like the Polisario is still there on the ground. It's just Trump said, "Okay, I recognize." When it comes to Sudan, um, at the time, I understand they're very poor. There were sanctions. They were under the terrorist list. I'm not going to say I understand, but you can nod and give the blind eye. It's like because their situation was hard. They're doing this in deliberate. They're actually like I don't know. Maybe they're trying to act as they're oh we're peaceful and civilized and nice. Maybe they're trying to bring in more investments, but at some point, wealth will disappear.
Hmm.
Oil will disappear. It's like, and all will be left is history, and you know that as a historian.
Yeah.
Um,
Or you got to stand on your own feet too, so that's
yeah,
also an issue for a lot of countries because they're just
I
seeing their
mean,
short-term interests. They're like, we'll normalize with Israel because of some short-term interest. But then the thing is, once say the U.S. pulls the support, then you got to stand on your own feet. And if you haven't developed the infrastructure or the independence, that could become very difficult.
it will, and honestly, like decades, maybe centuries from now, this will remain a thing. Like I'm pretty sure like the other countries, they kind of like they listen. It's like the Israelis will never fit. I will say it clearly. The Israelis will never fit in the Middle East as people. Like, and I'm not saying it as an insult, but I'm saying it as a fact. Um, when we have, for example, a film festival here, even in Canada, and we call it the MENA region, it will be a festival where you will have movies from Palestine, from Iran, from Turkey, from Kurdistan, like the Kurds, and maybe you will, and I'm sorry, it's like, and you will have maybe a documentary where an anti apartheid or anti-Zionist Israeli will join. Sure.
Yeah.
But you will never have a film like a Zionist movie joining this MENA
Mhm.
film festival. Or even, a group of young guys want to play soccer like I do with my friends. You will find, Iranians, you will find Kurds, you will find Turkish, and it's like politics. Sometimes, like our politics doesn't match their disagreements. You will find something, but you will never find the Israelis among this group.
Mhm.
And why is that?
Mhm.
Because you are not seeking peace; you're seeking domination.
Mhm.
So whatever your country did, it affected us. But also you're presenting yourself as a Western. That's why you would see Israel in Eurovision. That's why you will see them in in the European League.
Yeah.
That's why you will see them traveling to Europe so they can play sports or join arts or so there's really nothing in common uh, between us and as people from the region. We know what bothers us and where we stop. When it bothers the other, we will find these barriers. And I'm sorry, you want. It doesn't matter how much time you spend there. It doesn't matter if the UAE and all its money is you make business with them. The people there won't have you in. They won't accept you. The people. I'm not talking about the authorities. I'm talking about the normal, the average Joe.
That's right, and I think a major reason is, yeah, like you were mentioning, is that by the people of the region in the Arab world, in Iran, in West Asia, in North Africa, Israel is seen as an extension of Western imperialism, especially if you follow the history of Zionism. and how Israel was created. So because of that connection, I think people have a hard time accepting or seeing Israelis as being part of the region. They kind of see them as outsiders that have more European origin. And I mean, even Netanyahu himself. I mean, he had a very Eastern European sounding name until he
Yeah,
changed
he's
it. So I
Welsh.
think.
They do have that in the background in the Western mind. I'm not saying the Western, but the Western colonial mind. Not the average Joes, not the my friends, not the regular people around. I'm talking about the establishment. Uh, that there are resources in that part of the world, and the only way we can use it is to keep Israel there, because we're not sure, uh, or the other group of people, the Arabs, the Iranians, the Kurds, the Turkish, the Berbers, they're not us, but Israel is part of us. Um, so in the short term, um, with this balance of power among that's happening in the world, no one is coming for to rescue us. No one is coming for us, and no one is going to at least implement the international law and the international norms uh, on us, because we are subjects of Israel, and Israel is above the law. That is on the short term. Long term, um, we saw how the US gave it back to Ukraine last week. Don't forget the US gave it back to Georgia a few years ago, for that to Armenia. So, as for the long term, um, this is, and again, I might be a dreamer, but um, the more people are starting to know about Palestine and learn because of the genocide, at least from the liberal side, the progressive side, the left side, um, they will keep on pushing and pushing more, because they already know. Um, and it will exceed, because at this point, uh, they can't deny in like they can't be supporting for LGBT community. They cannot be supporting for Black Lives Matters. They cannot support the climate change matters, and then they give a blind eye to Palestine. Um, so, on the other hand, though, when it comes to the right wing, whether it's in the US or in the West in general, they started to see that Israel is costly. It costs a lot. And I'm not talking only about money. Israel is it's a legal burden, because it drags everyone around them to the accusations of apartheid, of occupation, of genocide. Um, it's a financial burden, because instead of having the American budget spent on healthcare or education, uh, instead of having it on social matters, it's spent on Israel. Um, and it's also a moral burden. It's a historical burden. On every level, Israel is a burden to the West at this point. Uh, and it's not giving anything back. Like, it's not like in the Soviet Union era, where you've got a, a, a social bloc and a Western bloc, and Israel was considered part of the Western bloc. No, there is nothing in return. All the Arab and most of the Arab and Muslim countries in that region, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, not only they're allies, but they're also giving way more to the West and to the US in particular than Israel is doing. So it is costly for nothing. Um, so if you have the right wing way of thinking, which is the materialistic way of thinking, why am I betting on the wrong losing horse here?
Mhm.
So from both sides of the aisle, the political way, uh, the Israeli regime, the current way that we see it, is doomed, at least from the West. And I'm not talking about how we are feeling in the Middle East. I'm not talking about the rest of humanity. So the West or the US that uh, uh, abandoned the North Vietnamese, uh, abandoned the Afghani uh, government uh, led by the Afghani government um, uh, against Taliban, abandoned Ukraine, abandoned Georgia, abandoned Armenia, and abandoned a lot of other countries, won't find it hard to abandon Israel at some point
Mhm.
if it's gonna remain this coasty.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean,
So
I think yeah, I think what you say is interesting because on the one hand, there are those kind of considerations, both in terms of realist interest and in terms of the morality issue that you're talking about. But at the same time, I think sometimes the kind of ideology is so strong, Zionist ideology is so strong in the U.S., especially when it comes to the evangelical Christians, that that will be a major obstacle. But I think I agree with you that in the long term, Israel will have major issues, especially because I mean, contrary to a lot of the resistant types that say Iran and Yemen and Hezbollah had the upper hand in this conflict. My opinion is that they're actually more vulnerable than before, and in a way, when it comes to the geopolitical configurations, Israel has the upper hand. Especially because so many of the top Hezbollah leadership were taken out, even though Hezbollah will likely reorganize in the coming years, but it will take some time. So geopolitically, I think Israel might have the upper hand right now, but morally and on the PR side, I think it's the first time that they have really lost the war on the PR and the moral side, and even a lot of the Western nations are kind of understanding the Palestinian narrative, and I think that was one reason that if you want to look at very mainstream Western platforms such as the Oscars, that's why the movie The Other Land, that was about the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, won an Oscar. I mean, I think this would be unimaginable just even like 2 or 3 years ago. But I think that the narrative is really shifting, and that will really help with what you're saying.
true, true, true. So what might happen though? And I might be wrong though. I don't think the two-state solution is viable anymore. It's not there in the ground because the Israelis are taking the land. There's nothing left. And once the power like that power shifts or this whole the regime collapse, um, I don't think that Israelis who didn't commit crimes are gonna leave. Like it might end up with a version of similar to what's happened in South Africa. The apartheid the apartheid regime collapsed, but not the people. Like there's still white South Africans over there. Um, there's still they do have certain powers. They are still in the political life. They're still in the social life, and the Israelis who didn't commit crimes, they don't have anything to fear because where would they go? But then if you commit crimes, most probably you will be prosecuted in a liberated Palestine.
You mean the leadership, the Israeli leadership?
Yeah. The leadership. Like this is something that we have to think about. Maybe once we reach the bridge, we're gonna cross it. Um, but definitely, I'm not seeing like there will be some who's not gonna accept living as equals with Palestinians. That's for sure, and that's where Poland will take them. Brooklyn will take them. Um, Kiev will take them. Uh, But then those who accept equality, those who accept human rights, um, those who wanted similar human rights among all, and law to be uh, and for us all to be under the same law, they will have good positions in liberated Palestine. They will have their status. They will be uh, supported, and we will take them in as we always did. Long history as, like, as Muslims were not only protecting Jews while they were suffering in Europe, but if you remember in the Ottoman Caliphate and even the Persian one, there were a lot of Jews in as who were acting as first ministers. Maybe not caliphates, but they were first ministers. They were highly appreciated. They were merchants. They were writers. And that's where I see liberated Palestine. That's where I see, despite everything that we are feeling now, but we must keep our humanity reveals, because that's how we evolve as humans. We mustn't let what Western did to us, Western colonizers who did to us, affects who we are as Middle Easterns and as indigenous to that land.
That's right. And regarding what you say, I mean, a lot of the hard resistant type groups that are considered to be anti-Semitic in the West, I mean, the position that many of them advocate is that they want a place where the Jews and the Christians and the Muslim can live peacefully under equal protection of the laws. And like you're saying, it would be comparable to the maybe 19th century case that, I mean, even if you might have had discrimination, and even if Muslims, according to Sharia law, had certain privileges that others didn't, but generally they got along, and the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians lived together. And I think a lot of people want not necessarily a return of the Sharia, but what they want is Muslims, Christians, and Jews living in a modern nation under the equal protection of the laws. And a lot of the resistant groups also say this. So I don't think it's a radical position, and I think it's something that should be achievable.
Once, and in a liberated Palestine, you won't be denied to enter. I'll take you to a very close place to my heart in Jerusalem. And they sell something called ka'ik, which is considered as sour bread. We do it differently with za'atar.
No, yeah, Palestinian cuisine is very delicious and very amazing, and very global at this point. I mean, everywhere you go, you have Palestinian dishes and desserts. And when I was living in New York, I remember there was a street in New Jersey called Patterson, and they had lots of Palestinian bakeries and Palestinian desserts. And yeah, so I'm in Pakistan now, but there was actually a literary festival here in Lahore. And there was a Palestinian food cart there that had falafels and Palestinian desserts, and they were actually there were students from, I think, the West Bank, who were in Lahore studying. I think you mentioned your sister studying in Pakistan, so there's also that interaction again between the global South here, where you have Palestinians coming to global South countries and are studying. At least the ones that are able, that have some freedom of movement.
The very first question that especially Arabs ask me, because they know the details: how did you end up here? How did you leave? How did you leave? How did you came out of the belly of the beast? How did you leave that cage? It's like, how is it possible? And it's not like, like in Tehran or like in Paris, or like a person buys a ticket and decides to travel. No, you've got a lot of steps that you have to do. There's You've got to have permissions from, of course, the occupation authorities that controls your life. Permits, the dates must be provided in advance, um, and you have to make sure that the country that's taking you is accepting, like there is no problems with that visa, because if you can't land there, then you're doomed for a few years of your life.
And when you come back, when you come back, you're probably interrogated. The Israeli officials probably interrogate people when they come back from travel.
I wasn't. I was with the Red Cross and the UN, and still I was integrated a few times with the Israelis. I was touched in private areas against my will, um, and, and still it does. I think that they do it not only for security reasons, but just so to show that they can do it. There was no reason at the time. Uh, and and they question you. Some of the questions are just, and at the time it was 2013, 2014, 2015. It wasn't something like there was nothing really huge happening. Um, at least to the Israeli side. Of course, it's always huge to us, but no one cares. I mean, the Westerns won't care. It only matters if it's the 7th of October. According to the Western narrative, the 7th of October, that's the center. That's when the universe started. That's when the universe is supposed to end. In and I don't know. Maybe as a historian, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Israelis. The reason why the Israelis it matters like their pain is more valuable than ours or it values more than ours because of three main reasons. A, because they are the God chosen people. Like there is some sort of a divine umbrella or a holy umbrella is protecting them, so they are seeing themselves and specific Christianity groups, they see them as the protected group. So no matter what they do, there is something that protects them, and the Zionists use that in their ways, they and then you've got the protection that comes with the European guilt, what the Europeans did to them throughout history. Like if the majority of Zionists who controls Israel are Western Zionists. They're either um, from Poland or the UK, like all the prime ministers from the UK, from Poland, from Ukraine originally, um, but then uh, the people, the average Israeli people, you will find them originally from Morocco, from Yemen. That it's kind of 50% because we as Arabs and Muslims we protected the Jews, and that's why you've got a lot of the biggest Jewish population is actually from the Middle East
Mhm.
uh, and from Russia, but then those who are in control are actually the few Western Zionists. And the third reason why the West is giving them that kind of uh, specific treatment, because of course uh, they're using them as an interest state or as a state that provides or supposedly provides some sort of uh, objectives for them.
Mhm.
So this is why the treatment of Israelis or the value of an Israeli life is not life value of an Israeli feeling is way more precious than a Palestinian life.
That's right. So yeah, so that's I think a very interesting assessment of both the short-term and long-term prospects for Palestine and the Palestinian people. And it is nice that the long-term assessment is more hopeful and more optimistic. So Nasser, thank you very much for joining us. I know you were definitely very busy and you took a lot of time to speak to us, and I think our audience really appreciates getting a perspective from Palestine and from somebody who has actually lived in Gaza and who can also communicate with the English-speaking audiences. So thank you for joining us.